guys, Zudo here. I saw a video recently on Y Combinator from Justin Kan, the founder of Twitch, and he talked about why you should not work at a startup and all the reasons why startups are such a difficult path to take. Startups are statistically improbable in the face of all odds. Startups are meant to be innovative companies where you raise money from venture capitalists, you take that money, you build a product, you achieve high growth in a short amount of time, you dominate a specific industry or part of the market. He has a few reasons why startups are such a risky bet to take and why it's statistically improbable that a startup will succeed. So I'm going to go over a few of those points he brings up and also talk about reasons why startups are actually a better thing to pursue than a bigger company.
Okay.
One reason why you should not work at a startup is because it's high risk. Working for a startup, there's a bunch of unknowns, which creates higher risk. You raise money from venture capitalists and essentially take that money to pursue a new market, new idea, and you go against all odds to do that. A lot of the time, when you raise a seed round or Series A at a startup, you're still finding product market fit, and most companies actually fail within the first 3 years. I think the statistic is 90% of all companies fail within the first 3 years. Technology startups are no different. When people think of startups, they think of venture capitalists with millions of dollars, giving it to a bunch of nerdy guys to go build a product or service.
Technologies.
And generate higher returns, 5 to 10 years later. The huge risk that's associated with that is if you're raising money from VCs, you have obligations to meet, and they typically have very hard targets to hit, which is kind of why they always bet on 10 to 20 companies and only one of those will succeed. It's just very improbable that all of their companies they put money into are going to work out. One thing that's important to know when you do work at a startup is you should know the run rate of the company. The run rate assumes that the conditions at the company will continue into the future. And it's helpful for, evaluating the performance of a company that's only been around for a short period of time. If you're early on in your company, you should know your run rate, but sometimes in a slightly bigger startup, you're not going to know the run rate. It's just important to be aware of these things if you were to join a startup. Another point that Justin Kan brings up in the Y Combinator video is the fact that startups basically have little to no direction. So depending on the size of your startup, you might be the only person in your department or your specific function, and you may not even have a lot of experience in this department or role that you've been placed into, and it can be very scary for people who have never had this much pressure on them before. I like to say that in startups you wear a bunch of hats, which is very true. When the team is small and there's little to no direction, you really have to be a go-getter. You really have to be a self-starter and figure problems out as they come. You will be performing 3 to 5 to maybe 10 different roles on a day-to-day basis. So you have to be very comfortable with little to no direction. Also in a startup, you may or may not have a boss depending on the size of the team. And if you do have a boss, it actually may be their first time ever managing a team. Sometimes you feel aimless if your manager or boss doesn't really know what they're doing, but it's important to stick together as a team. And this is why I bring up in my last video that you need to be able to talk to people because you're such a small team, you need to be able to communicate with each other. A lot of the time, since your manager or the heads of the company have never been in executive leadership roles before, it may be a difficult transition to pick up on. In my current company, this is the first time that I've ever managed people in a professional environment, and there's a lot to learn. It's really about, picking up on people's cues, how they communicate, and if you like not having direction and like being a self-starter, I think that startups are really great for that type of role. Another reason why you should not join a startup is its low stability. There is an always changing nature in the company, and one week may look very different from the next. It's not a stable job where you come in and you sit at a desk and you kind of do the same thing every day. And one day you may be running around trying to hire people, the next you may be running campaigns. You may get a giant spike in growth and you need to figure out why.
Why?
The nature of the company is always changing. You might have to pivot in your product. and still continue to find product market fit. So it's very important you're comfortable being in a low stability environment, being able to see opportunities where they come. So those are just a few reasons that Justin Kan brings up why you should not join a startup. He really emphasizes that he's trying to scare people away from joining startups, and he is a successful entrepreneur, so he has the hindsight to think of these things. And while you're executing in your job at a startup, it's important to kind of have these in the back of your mind. How risky is this job? What is the TAM, the total addressable market of this company? When you interview at these companies, you need to kind of understand these things to see if this company could last a year, 2 years, 3 years in the future, and if your current trajectory for your career is stable. A few reasons why you should join a startup I find to be the most important. I think that one of the greatest parts about working at a startup is the fact that you have access to opportunities that you are not qualified for. What I mean is that when you work at a company that is so small, there's a lot of room for growth. There's a lot of leadership roles you can take. And when opportunities arise, you can put yourself into them. You won't be handpicked from a higher level team like a larger company. Things are really based on performance. And if you have that self-starter attitude, you may just be able to have a job that you're not qualified for, like head of technology or head of design. And you may have not done that before, but it's not about climbing the ladder. It's about seeing opportunities and executing on a day-to-day basis. To piggyback off that point, I think that, you might not be qualified for the role you're in. You may be younger in your career and not ready for management, but the opportunity could arise at your startup, your small company, and you might just have to take the plunge. The last reason why I think that you should join a startup, you can really maximize your learning on a job. A lot of jobs are really boring. You sit down at your desk 9 to 5, and you're not really learning, you're not picking up new skills, you're not trying new tools, you're not meeting new people. But I think that what a startup really provides is the ability to maximize your learning. If you want to learn something new, you typically don't have endless resources, but you have enough resources to get started, and it's really up to you to find these opportunities and pursue them. Hey guys, sorry about that. I was just finishing up my last points about why you should not work at a startup and why you should. If you like content like this about business, startups, real estate, and more, please like and subscribe for that almighty algorithm. I'll see you next time. Peace.